I think the Satoyama landscape really is now a very current concept because increasingly the global community has been sensitized to the linkage between ecosystem services and human well-being. Ecosystem services had been introduced when the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment findings was released in 2005. And what the Satoyama and the Satoyama-like landscape provides are ecosystem services, which include provisioning services like for food, for feed, timber, wood, fuel, water, and also regulating services like regulation of flood, regulation of climate, and also cultural services, aesthetic value, spiritual value, recreational value, educational value. So if you look at it, the Satoyama is a very timely concept to be advanced in today's increasingly urbanized world. With respect to climate change, global warming, with temperature rising, and maybe with flooding from the sea, there might be a case to develop varieties which are, say, salt tolerant or drought tolerant, adverse consequences of climate change. In terms of food security, there is also a case to be made. I believe in some of the Satoyama-like landscape, this ecosystem is a repository of traditional land races, varieties of crops, which are resistant to pests and diseases. So we can look at this ecosystem to provide the resources for future agricultural production. To look at it in the global sense, you would have to link it up with some of the current concern of mankind. And one of those current concerns would be the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity as embodied in the International United Nations Treaty, the Convention on Biological Diversity. So the way I see it, the Satoyama initiative would be one project or one initiative that could support the realization of that lofty objectives. Of course, there are many ways of trying to conserve and sustainably use biodiversity, but the Satoyama initiative can be one of those approaches that can assist in meeting the needs or the objectives of the convention. Well, the Satoyama initiative can try to mobilize and inventorize best practices on sound management of ecosystem. Those best practices could be from Japan and anywhere else in the world. Secondly, those cases should be analyzed and some of its positive features identified and possibly turn into programs of work that could be elaborated further by the global community. Eventually, from those experiences, it should also develop some capacity building programs or training programs to promote awareness and understanding of these best practices embodied in the initiative. So those are some of the practical things I think should be done on an immediate scale. Secondly, I think the Satoyama initiative should be linked to some of the ongoing processes. I mentioned earlier about the Convention on Biological Diversity and its objective. Secondly, I think it should be linked with the 2010 post-biodiversity targets. Thirdly, also it could be linked to global goals like the Millennium Development Goals. So all those are already pointers that could be linked to the Satoyama initiative.